Sobeys Stadium, August 9th, 2026. The scoreboard reads 6-4, 6-0. Match point comes and goes. In an instant, Alex Eala reaches for a ball she cannot get to, and it is over. For one strange second, 10,000 people exhale at the exact same moment, and the building sounds nothing like it did an hour earlier. Eala, favoring her right ankle, walks to the net, shakes hands, and turns to face the stands that have followed her for 2 straight weeks. What she says to that crowd first on court, then again in the press room, is the reason this story is still being talked about days later. But that comes later. 6 days before that final point, Eala was standing in a different stadium, in a different country, holding her very first WTA Tour trophy over her head. This is the story of everything that happened in between. Rewind to Washington, D.C., 8 days earlier. On August 3rd, 2026, Eala beat top seed Jessica Pegula 4-6, 6-4, 6-0 in the final of the Mubadala DC Open, a match suspended overnight by rain and finished the next afternoon. The win made her the first tennis player from the Philippines to capture a WTA Tour singles title. She had entered the week ranked No. 28 in the world. She left it projected to crack the top 20 for the first time in her career, having already eliminated Zheng Jinwen, defending champion Leylah Fernandez, Alina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka along the way. Afterwards, she described the moment in one raw sentence: "I was so nervous, and I kind of just blacked out." Even Pegula, the player who had just lost a final on home soil, admitted what she was up against. Playing into that crowd, she said, was not fun to play against, but the atmosphere itself she called amazing. There was no time to celebrate. From Washington, Eala flew straight into Toronto for the National Bank Open, her first ever WTA 1000 tournament, one tier above the title she had just won, and the biggest stage of her career so far. She entered as the 25th seed. Tournament organizers had already put her face on promotional material before the draw was even released, betting on the same crowd-pulling force that had just reshaped an entire tournament in Washington. The moment the draw came out, the reaction was immediate. Toronto is home to one of the largest Filipino populations of any city outside the Philippines, and that community turned out in force for Eala's opening match against Alicia Parks. Sobeys Stadium sold out all 10,000 seats. Families arrived wrapped in Philippine colors. Homemade signs filled the lower bowl. Laban, Alex, a Filipino rallying cry that means roughly fight, rang out on nearly every changeover. Eala needed 3 sets to get past Parks, but by nearly every account, the stands were the real story that night. A 25th seed, making her Masters-level debut, had just sold out a stadium before anyone had even seen her play a point. And that is exactly when the conversation stopped being only about tennis. Not everyone loved what they were watching. As Eala kept winning first, surviving a 3-set battle against Alicia Parks to open the tournament, then grinding through a brutal, late-night 3-set escape against Katie McNally that stretched deep into the evening and pushed her run to 7 straight matches across 2 tournaments, a very different kind of noise started building online. Some longtime tennis observers questioned whether crowds unfamiliar with the sport's usual etiquette were disrupting the rhythm of matches, pointing to noise between points and during rallies as a break from tour-level norms. Filipino fans in turn pushed back hard, arguing that loud, passionate support is no different from what every other major sport already embraces, while some in the community posted their own apologies for moments they felt had gone too far. None of it was really about Eala herself. It was a broader argument about what tennis crowds are allowed to sound like. But it settled over Toronto like static, and by the time Eala walked out to face Belinda Bencic, the room was loaded before a single ball was struck. To understand what happened next, forget the scoreline for a second. Bencic, the 12th seed and the tournament's 2015 champion, took the first set 6-4. The second set was a different animal entirely. She closed it out 6-0, winning 62% of total points and converting 6 of her 10 breakpoint chances. Read as a headline, that is a rout. Read against the 6 days that came before it, it is something else. On Monday, Eala was still preparing for a WTA 500 final against the tour's 3rd-ranked player. By Sunday, she was lifting her first career trophy after a match interrupted overnight by rain. Days later in Toronto, she was locked in a 3-set war against McNally that ran deep into the night, the same match where her ankle first became a problem. By the following Sunday, she was facing an in-form Bencic on almost no recovery time, playing her 5th match in 9 days. Strip that context away, and you get the lazy headline that spread within hours: Bencic silenced Eala. Put the context back in, and a different picture emerges: a champion playing a near-flawless match against an opponent who had nothing left to give. Then came the part of the night nobody could fully explain. Television cameras panning across the stadium in the minutes after match point caught something unmistakable: sections that had been packed with Philippine flags all week now, sitting noticeably emptier. There is no confirmed, organized walkout here, no official statement, no verified count of exactly how many left or how fast, and any specific number floating around online after the match deserves real skepticism until a primary source backs it up. But the visual was real, and it was hard to miss. This was not a protest against Bencic, who had just won the match fair and square. It was proof of exactly who those seats belonged to all along. The crowd at Sobeys Stadium that week was never a neutral tennis audience that happened to enjoy the tennis. It was an audience built around one player, the same way crowds have long organized themselves around Rafael Nadal in Spain or Roger Federer in Switzerland. When that player left the building, a meaningful share of the crowd left with her. Not an insult, a signature. Eala's own words afterward told the real story better than any single result could. Tired, still processing a loss that snapped a 7-match winning streak, she did not frame the tournament as a failure. Tough one today. She put me in some really tough situations, she said of Bencic. But overall, a really good week. I'm super happy with the run I've had, and I'm going to try to recover and come back out hot. She did not hide the toll it had taken, admitting there was that initial feeling of being a little tired and down after the match, while making clear her health came first, above any result. And when asked about the crowd that had carried her through 2 countries in 2 weeks, she did not reach for a big dramatic line. She did not need one. It's hard to describe the feeling of being in that stadium full of love, she said. It's been an amazing debut. I'll carry these memories for a long time. If anyone still wanted to argue that Eala's crowd was somehow bad for the sport, one voice ended that argument for good, and it belonged to the woman who beat her. Bencic is an Olympic gold medalist, a former top 5 player, a Grand Slam quarterfinalist, and a mother rebuilding her way back toward the top of the game. She had every reason in the world to treat a stadium full of opposing fans as a hostile environment. Instead, seconds after closing out the win, she turned to the crowd and thanked them, unprompted. I know most of you were cheering for Alex, but it was very nice for me to play in front of you all. Thank you so much for the great crowd. Coming from a player with that Ursum, that one sentence did more to end the etiquette debate than every argument posted online in the days before it. It is very hard to keep insisting a crowd is a problem when the player who just beat their favorite is the one thanking them for showing up. Zoom all the way out, and this stops being just a sports story. It becomes a business case tournaments cannot afford to ignore. A 25th seeded player, brand new to the WTA 1000 level, helped sell out a 10,000 seat stadium, and reportedly moved ticket demand around her matches before she had won a single point at the event. That kind of drawing power tied to one athlete rather than the tournament's traditional stars echoes the effect names like Serena Williams have had on ticket sales and broadcast interest at tour stops for years. Whatever side of the etiquette debate a fan lands on, the math for organizers is simple. Crowds like the one Eala pulled into Toronto mean revenue, viewership, and relevance for a sport that has spent years chasing exactly that. What happens next depends on her body, not her draw sheet. The ankle that first flared against McNally remains the open question heading into Cincinnati, with her participation there still pending. Beyond that sits the U.S. Open in Queens, New York, a market with an even bigger Filipino-American community than the greater Toronto area, and a stage where this exact same scene could plausibly happen all over again, only louder. As for Eala herself, there has been no spiral, no meltdown, nothing dramatic. Just a short, grateful message to fans after Toronto, and a press room promise repeated in her own words. Recover, learn, and come back out hot. Add it all up, and the receipts do not lie. A 21-year-old ranked outside the top 25 barely a week earlier walks out of Washington with her first WTA title and a spot inside the top 20, after beating 4 seeded opponents in a row, including a defending champion. She lands in Toronto for her first WTA 1000 event and sells out a stadium before her first match is even played. She survives a 3-set opener, then a 3-set war that runs into the night, and wins 7 matches in a row across 2 tournaments on an ankle that is quietly falling apart underneath her the entire time. She finally loses, not to nerves, not to inexperience, but to a former Olympic champion, playing some of the cleanest tennis of her own comeback. And instead of that opponent resenting the crowd that had been chanting against her all night, she thanks it out loud, on the spot, unscripted, then when Eala finally walks off. A visibly emptier stadium becomes the clearest proof yet of exactly how much of that crowd came for her and only her. None of this required a walkout, a scandal, or a manufactured controversy to be a story worth telling. It was already there in the numbers: a sold-out 10,000-seat stadium, a 7-match winning streak, a first WTA title, a jump into the top 20, and a beaten opponent choosing gratitude over complaint. The etiquette debate that flared up in the middle of the tournament will keep going, because debates like that always do. But it is worth remembering what actually happened on the court and in the stands while that debate was playing out online, because the 2 stories are not the same one, and only one of them is backed by a scoreboard. So here's the question worth sitting with. Does the WTA lean into this, or does it try to manage it, soften it, sand off the edges in the name of tradition? If you were flying the flag before the seedings were even out, before the trophy in Washington, before any of this had a headline, this is your channel. There is a community here that saw this coming long before the highlight reels caught up. Stay with the story. Subscribe, because there is more of this coming.